So welcome, everyone. Thank you guys for waking up bright and early. Thank you for joining us. It's Tech Tuesday. I'm super excited. This is year 4 for Sneaker Week and year 3 for our official Tech Tuesday takeover. Today, we're going to be focusing on 3D technology within the world, within the footwear industry specifically, and also talking about kind of where things are going, a little bit of kind of maybe what's in store for the future, how it's changing that landscape. So I want to go around and introduce to everyone our panelists today, and I'm going to go in the Brady Bunch order that is my Zoom screen right now. And I'm going to start with Mr. Brett Brown. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell a little bit about what you do?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining this panel. My name is Brett Brown. I'm a 3D designer at Nike, which basically means I work within the design team. I use a lot of 3D software to come up with new ideas, to visualize new designs, and et cetera. So I also work in the Air Max category. So thank you all for joining. Good morning.
Awesome. All right, Seyi.
Hey everyone, my name is Sosanya. I'm co-founder and CEO of Gravity Sketch. We've been developing this 3D design platform for quite some time now with a core focus on trying to get as close to pen and paper as possible, but still have this idea of ambiguity in 3D sketching. So we deployed a solution about 3 years ago on the Oculus Store, and since then we've deployed on Steam as well as the Oculus Quest, which is the all-in-one headset. And the real mission for us is to help bridge those gaps in the workflow where we move from 2D to 3D. And we started pretty strongly in the automotive industry. And in more recent years, we've seen a lot of uptick from the footwear industry. And we're actually seeing a couple of major brands using our software to help bridge that gap from seamlessly from the 2D space into the 3D world. And we'll be talking a little bit about that today and also with a demo later this afternoon.
Mm-hmm. All right, up next we got Ryan.
Hi everyone, I'm Ryan Teng. I'm VP Business Development for Clo Virtual Fashion for the Americas. We are a company that hopes to empower users and people around the world with our various platforms and softwares and services, whether it's in categories like apparel where we started, but slowly moving into things like footwear, home goods, anything that's cloth-based. And I think it's been really exciting for me for the past 4 years that I've worked here to see the industry embrace 3D and see the joys that it can bring and problems that it can solve while also improving creativity and innovation at the same time. So happy to be here.
Awesome. We're super stoked to have you here as well. And last but not least, Pierre.
Hello from France. Pierre Maheut. I'm part of Adobe now, formerly Algorithmic, and we are developing a software called Substance, and we are focusing on digital material creation and texturing of 3D assets, and that's what usually our users are doing. For instance, coming from Gravity Sketch or from Clo, they're able to apply digital materials and do crazy things with this. Like Seyi, also we had a big traction in the automotive industry and also in sportswear and apparel. And I think the digital materials are really key in this industry. So we're very excited to push forward the boundaries of 3D for the footwear and apparel designers.
Yeah, absolutely. Super excited again to have everyone with us. We have a handful of people in our Zoom chat as well as people watching on Twitch. So throughout this conversation, if you guys have questions, please drop them in the chat. I'm going to do my best to catch everyone's questions in a timely manner. I know sometimes when we're speaking about things that are really technical, if you don't get that question kind of right in the moment, you forget a little bit of the context. So I will do my best at reading, again, all the screens, all of them, because that's what we do. So first question, Brett, we talked a little bit, just this brief intros for everyone. Actually, wait, I'm going to hold that question. Let's go to the next one. Let's go maybe a little bit more in depth, and we can do this one by one, and then I have a question for you, Brett, which will tie it all together nicely. So for each of you, for Gravity Sketch, Clo, and Substance, how do each of your guys's products and the software programs work in the greater workflow of, let's just say, athletic apparel? Because I know Clo is a little more fashion-based right now. So yeah, how do those kind of work within that workflow? Where do you see them kind of in the beginning, ideation, manufacturing, et cetera? Let's go. I'm going to pick on Pierre. You go first now.
Here we go. So on our end, we don't do any modeling in our tools. So we need a 3D model to start with. And in parallel, we also are building materials, digital materials, whatever it's based on scan. So if you have the physical sample, then you capture it with existing device such as Visu or Tag7, or even with your cell phone camera. We explain on our website how you can create this material scanner. And then the whole idea is how you combine this 3D model with the digital material through the texturing phase. So we're coming from the game industry where the texturing phase is very big. And we are importing also technology coming from the game industry in order to provide real-time visualization and very high-end realistic visualization of the materials, because we are able to show the material the way they are reacting to light. So if it's glossy, if it's matte, if it's metallic, also the effects can be done within chipsets.
Super cool. All right, Ryan.
Yeah, I think, like I mentioned that, I started 4 years ago at Clo and I had no experience with 3D or anything. And I thought that at the time we were become a tool that was specifically used for just designers or just tech designers or just one facet of the workflow. And in the past 4 years, we've proven that if the software is intuitive enough, anyone can use the software. And I think that's been really interesting to explore as we work with these companies who ask us, hey, we've been using you for apparel for a while. Can we be used in footwear? And a lot of times we say we weren't built for it, but let's explore together. And I think that's kind of the beauty of 3D is that while it is becoming the norm in the industry, it is also on the verge of exploration for people to try out new things and see how far it can go. And it's a partnership with the users and us and all, us, Gravity Sketch, as well as Substance, to figure out what users want, and we can build it all together. And I think that's been really cool to be a part of, to see that it transcends design development and can be used in, marketing, e-commerce, sales meetings, can be used just to concept new designs. It can be used in lots of different places, production, et cetera. So, I'm excited to see where else it can go. And every time the people ask, like, can it do this? We go, why not? And let's try it out. So, yeah.
That's my favorite, is the why not? Yeah, let's see what we can do. Let's see what we can create. Last but not least, Shay, tell us a little bit about where Gravity Sketch fits into the greater workflow.
Yeah, so we named it after Sketch because we thought, okay, it's gonna be the front end of your workflow. Everything in the built environment starts with a sketch, right? From the chair you're sitting in, the microphone you're speaking through, your eyewear right now. Someone sketched that before it became reality, before it became materiality. And I'd say that probably dates back for a good few hundred years, right? Where it's been sketched before and planned before it's actually came to materialization. And we only had a simple sketching tool to start with. So it was always around, okay, us as designers are thinking in 3D, but we're trained to represent those 3D ideas through perspective on a 2D piece of paper or a display. And that actually takes a lot of skill and finesse, because at the end of the day, you're just trying to communicate that sketch to someone else, and then eventually to a larger group of people, and eventually the manufacturers who need to bring it to life. And so if you can do that sketch that you'd have to do 6 or 7 times to get a different perspectives, different angles once in 3D, that would tell a lot of information, and you'd be able to carry that further in the workflow. But then we started to add tools like surfacing, and we added some subdivision modeling, and we're adding textures more recently. And it starts to become this thing where people are using it to kind of fill out a larger chunk of the pipeline. So from 2D sketching and between CAD, we're kind of like reaching and blending a little bit further and further into both of those realms. Not at all do we want to replace them, but we think there's still a place for thumbnail sketching, quick sketching, and there's definitely going to be always a place for CAD, but that transition period is really challenging. And more recently, we start to include collaboration. And now we're starting to see, we're coming at the very tail end when someone's already kind of had everything modeled up in another software. They're bringing it into Gravity Sketch just to hold design reviews, so they can jump in and they can sketch on top of things and ideate. And so again, as Ryan said, we just working with our users, we found that maybe it's not just the designers that need to use Gravity Sketch, but it's other people that need to engage with the designers and comment and highlight things. So we're finding ourselves that as really strong in the front end and starting to explore this area towards the tail end, the design and review phase.
That's super, super cool. I know we're going to cover a lot more about that collaboration space in the 11:30 demo. I'm super, super excited to hear that. So Brett, I have a slightly different question for you. As a 3D designer, how do you and your team, because I know you do work with a whole team of really talented designers, how do you guys, through your process, through a project, work and integrate these different technologies into your guys' overall workflow?
Yeah, kind of going to piggyback off of what Shay said. Like a lot of times, even when it comes to integrating 3D into the process, it does start with a sketch, or it does start with like a rough idea. A lot of times that is a sketch, but that definitely doesn't have to start with a sketch. Sometimes it can be kind of a more sculptural 3D expression of an idea. And then that idea then gets refined. They take the 3D, do some sketches on top of it, and then go back to 3D. It may take the sculptural element in 3D and refine that. But the beautiful thing about working in design within, at like a company is I get to use and see like all the different tools come together, I guess, for like one common goal, which is kind of just to communicate the design, typically to people who like don't know 3D and have a hard time with that translation between a sketch and a final product. So we go from a sketch to a lot of 3D modeling, a lot of 3D printing. May take a 3D print, sketch on top of the print, and then do a revision on the 3D model that it was made from. It's kind of like a continuous loop, until we land on the final design. And then once we land on the final design, it's okay, how do we show that to like the fullest level of like design intent? And that's where like things like substance and things like that come in, where you not only do like the midsole and the bottom of a shoe, but you also do the upper, and you pick out the accurate materials. So then you could show somebody, again, who has no background in 3D and doesn't know anything about it, you could show them a render and it looks one-to-one to the real thing. And that is extremely powerful. And I think it hasn't been until recently where the technology has really caught up to kind of where we want it to go, where you have that ability to show things at that fidelity and pretty quickly. Like I think the process to create 3D is probably, I'm not going to say it's easy, but I'd say the tools now are so advanced. The barrier to entry is the lowest. At least I've been doing 3D for over 10 years now, and how I used to texture compared to like substance, it's a total night and day. But yeah, we cover it all like within doing 3D design.
That's super cool. So I'm going to piggyback off of that. You talked a little bit about ease of entry and kind of how these programs have changed and adapted. I have a background in physical fabrication, and through my work at Wacom, I have the privilege and honor of like being exposed to all of these things. And you can see like the UI of a program change over the years, which is really nice. So then individuals that go into it that don't have any background in if it's like Photoshop or any 2D or any digital program, it is getting a lot easier. So one thing I want to ask, and I'm going to open this up to everyone, so feel free just to chime in. What are some of, and I have benefits and freedoms, because I think there's a lot of creative freedom with easily understood UI. What are some of the benefits that you have seen? Because I know all of you guys work with different design teams around the world. What are some of those benefits that you've seen with these teams working in the 3D and virtual space, things that you think are now possible that maybe weren't possible 10 years ago, if that made sense.
I can go first.
Cool, yeah.
I think that, when we look back at even sketching in general in the apparel industry specifically, and how, some companies out there still hand draw sketches, and that's, it's a beautiful artwork. And then it moved to Adobe Illustrator to do technical sketches and things like that. But, the same thing that Seyi was talking about, this problem between CAD and pattern or production had always existed. And so at least for us, being a pattern-based software, we have kind of gotten rid of that problem and been able to have people concept with a pattern associated with it and be able to see that instantly. And I think with a lot of those things going on in regards to sustainability and reducing samples and all those waste things, I think it serves multiple purposes. And I think that any good solution should do that. It should be solving multiple things. And if anything, it should always be, for the most part, beneficial to the industry. So I think, that's probably the biggest thing, is that for, 10 years ago, there was no choice but to waste. But at this point, it's all out there for you, and the industry is embracing it. And I think, whether it's us, whether it's any 3D software, any, tool out there, there's so many options at this point because the industry has helped lead this innovation on the way. And I think it's the right time for people to take advantage of it, because even for us, 5-6 years ago, we didn't know as much as we know now. And we've accumulated experience, like you said, from working with these different clients around the world. And while, yes, it'd be easy to say that everyone's supply chain is the same, there are some nuances here and there, and what they focus on is different, whether it's, a certain department. So those years of experience have really helped push us to develop correctly as well.
Yeah, I would say everything that we're talking about in this call is 3D, like apparel, footwear, and technology hasn't really allowed us to work directly in 3D. And I'm talking from a company that we literally kind of survive off of technology that just was developed less than 5 years ago, right? And working directly in 3D with your hands, with material, is probably like the ultimate form, right? It's not the fastest form, right? So this ability to almost like sidestep physically carving something or working with clay directly and kind of getting messy, to just being clean, fast, fluid, and have that same type of freedom and expression and ambiguity that you would have with a 2D sketch. That actually is what's changing the way that people are approaching this medium. So it's not like these things haven't existed for so long. As Brett was saying, he's been working in 3D for 10 years, right? Myself for around 8 years. They've been there. It's just you've had this very steep learning curve to get into the software, and the tool has been very complicated. And sometimes it's based on the technology. Maybe the algorithms can't run fast enough in order for them to kind of create the geometry and runtime. And now with the computational power, we have things like stereoscopic view and virtual reality, and you can literally draw a stroke for the first time ever in midair, and it's sitting there in a digital world, right, an environment. And so when we go and talk to customers, and I'll primarily focus on the footwear customers, one of the consistent frustrations we find is that they spend a lot of time in Illustrator doing like the sole tech pack so they can send it out. And they have to imagine between part lines how that curve is kind of transitioning. And it's a three-dimensional curve. That curve is not 2D, but it has to be projected to 2D, send that over to a factory in Vietnam or China, and they have to then pull that together and create the model for the tooling. So this is like kind of the first time that designers at the very early stages of the design process have a lot of liberty and a lot of ability themselves to do some 3D problem solving around some of the more detailed aspects of the outsole or even the upper, before it gets into this very granular state. Because often when you hop into 3D, you have to start locking down dimensions and proportions and really stiff geometry and to make those kinds of decisions. So what I think is how allowed, what this tool and what 3D has allowed people to do is do a lot of this concepting and problem solving and kind of working through ideas really early on in the process before you commit a lot of time and resources. And that in turn just creates a much more expressive, creative product. So it boggles my mind to think about how many compromises had to be made for something like maybe like the Jordan Retro 5 to come to life, and what would that look like now if we had 3D software to prototype 7, 8, 12 iterations of that in the same day that you're working on the kind of final model, and how different would that shoe be? How much more innovative, or how much more creativity would have been injected into that? And I think that's really where we are with 3D. You're working directly with almost the final representation in a lot of ways, or at least the final proportions.
Yeah.
Can I add in on that?
You sure can. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of, again, piggybacking off of what Seyi said, like working within a company and kind of working within that design and development process, typically leading up to production. Like that's kind of like the end goal when it comes to a lot of, when you're working in 3D, is you're iterating, you're figuring out design leading up so you can hand it off to actually get like a physical sample made. And yeah, back in the day, that's, guesstimating like a curve in like 6 different places on the same tooling, and then hoping that the factory, which if you don't know much about footwear, typically they're made overseas, not much here in America. So typically you would send that over, you wait, and you hope that what you get back is representative of what you draw or what you drew. And then if it's not, well, then now you have to battle with the time zone. You have to battle with, just a lot of communication issues. And it just starts to really could be a long revolving door. There have been a lot of projects that I've worked on where it's like, we get something back from the factory and it's like, hey, I'm having a hard time like just describing like the curvature of like this one edge, and like the factory just can't get it right. And I, having 3D software, I can say, okay, give me that 3D file. I sculpt it to what it's supposed to look like, and we send it back. And then like, that's all the communication that you need to do. So the power within 3D in it is, before you get to that stage, you iterate, you design, you basically have all the fun basically before you really have to get down to like the nitty and gritty and think about measurements and tolerances between different parts of a tooling. So the 3D side of it, it's pure fun. Obviously it's serious business, but you get to have a lot of fun going back and forth. And then when you finished a model and you send it to the factory, and then when you get it back and it's like 1-to-1 to what you sent, like when you think about a lot of the time and the money that is saved there, like that's, if you multiply that by X number of shoes that a company does, imagine if every single shoe that they design and develop goes through that process. Mm-hmm. That's got to be millions of dollars saved, countless hours, weeks, months of time saved. So yeah, I think we're entering a part where 3D, even more so highlighted by COVID, I think is going to become more and more important in the overall design process.
I think that fun thing, we shouldn't leave that out. And for so long, 3D has not been fun, right? And so many designers that we talk to, they're terrified, I tried something ages ago and I could not get my head around it. You're met with all these different panels that pop up and drop down and all kinds of verbiage like extrude, chamfer, fillet, things that you're not familiar with from your other software tools. So it almost looks like a mountain you have to climb up, but I do think that the tools are becoming fun. Like that's one of our mandates for our design team, is the experience has to be fun. It has to be enjoyable. We don't say fun, we say enjoyable. And yeah, as Brett said, what's important is to kind of shift the thinking around having fun in that process of design. Don't feel too scared to kind of just move away from your pencil and move into something that could also be used as that creative tool or that creative expressive tool. And I think CAD companies have done a pretty poor job at explaining and highlighting how their interfaces have become more flexible, how you can hide certain widgets and things like that. And maybe maybe we got to do some work on onboarding on the software side to make sure that people don't have this kind of negative connotation with 3D.
If I may add something, on our end, especially on Substance side, our founder, Sébastien Deguy, always had this concept of augmented artistry. So the software, the computers, computation power, whatever you call it, are here to serve the creativity of the designers, and not the opposite around, like making it more complex. And I completely agree with what Seyi and Brett said about the fluid workflow. Because back in the days, you just were stuck in Bezier curve, and then you have to convert and to do a crazy job to have it work in other software or push it to the next thing. And for instance, one of the latest projects we did, like we just push a button and we had a 3D print that already looks like the physical product. So exactly what Brett was saying, like we are saving money, but also we are saving time, and we are right to the point. We are not losing our way on the way to get the results. You can get it in your hand as soon as possible. You can see it in AR, augmented reality. You can see it in VR. It's a right scale, as you would experience it as a final customer and as a designer. And being an industrial designer today is so much fun. I mean, I would love to graduate like last year or the year before, because it's so exciting.
I know. It's always interesting. You watch, year after year, month after month, new technology come out, all these programs change and adapt and become a bit from an outside standpoint, you look at it and you're like, oh, I think I could figure that out. To be an industrial design student right now would be super, super amazing. We do actually have a couple questions in the chat that I want to kind of jump and bump in the middle of this. I can figure out where my cursor went again, all my epic screens here. The first question was, oh good, there's good questions now. I have to scroll. That means we're doing a good job. How much training do you feel is needed to feel comfortable using the programs? And this might, I'll take everyone's answers, but I'm curious, Brett, too, from working in a team of designers, maybe onboarding new designers, how long does it take for people to really kind of to get it? And it's probably different for each. It's probably different for each of your guys' programs as well.
Yeah, that really comes down to the specific program. Some are a lot easier to pick up than others. And really it kind of comes down to, you get out what you put in. And I know a lot of people who get really frustrated, with some of the tools and, various 3D programs, and, or some people just kind of have a hard time wrapping their head around just kind of the language, I guess you could say, about what it means to create something in 3D. But like, if you were really passionate and you really wanted to know how to use like a 3D modeling program, you could build something, you could learn your way around it within like a month, maybe even less than that. But you just kind of have to keep in mind what keep your expectations of what you're going to create in check, and you just kind of look at it as a gradual learning process of, okay, I built this looks pretty good. Are there some tools that I haven't utilized that I could apply to make it this better going forward? But again, like I said earlier, I think 3D software is easier now to use than it's ever been. Definitely thinking back to when I learned 3D, which was way back in 2005. I learned on Maya or using Maya, and if I was a student in school today, like rock star. It's so much it's so much easier. It's so much easier today than it's ever been.
Yeah. It's true. There's just a lot of there's just cool stuff happening now.
Yeah. Maybe one thing I can add on our end, and it was before we did join Adobe, is that Substance Painter, the tool that is really the main tool we are developing, most of the people were saying that it's a Photoshop in 3D. And it's kind of a shortcut, obviously, but also showcasing that people are confident enough to understand what's going on, because there is a layer stack, like what you do in Photoshop. And then also people saying that the new color are materials, because what you see in the real world are materials. So also the glossiness, the textures, the metallic part of it. So it just, augmenting the realism of the thing that you are working on. And so it's always difficult to say a number, but on our end, on Substance Painter, people get it. If they start the day at 10 a.m., at the end of the day, they know how to do things with Substance Painter. It's as fast as that.
That's great.
Yeah, it's kind of like, what do you deem as onboarding or fully being onboarded, right? So in a lot of ways, you might want to just do a couple of curves in space and just see how that feels. And most softwares, you can get that done in a about a day even. Just watching YouTube. YouTube is like such a great learning tool. And with Gravity Sketch, we're kind of up against 3D software a lot of the time, even though we don't want to replace CAD at all. We just want to help bridge the gap. And so one of the questions that we get, especially in the automotive industry, is like, how long is it going to take for our guys to onboard? Because the procurement person has to calculate the switching costs. Like, they're thinking about, okay, there's a cost incurred for us to have 7-8 designers learning this. And that's always going to be a dip in productivity before you get really serious gains. And so they have to calculate what that dip below the standard line is. And so we were lucky enough to partner up with one of the big American automotives in Detroit, and we put 50 designers through, and we were measuring the onboarding time. And for them, onboarding meant they had to create a 1-to-1 scale car in just curves. So just full curve 1-to-1 scale car. And on average, we had an 8-hour onboarding time. That's across 3 sessions. So 8 hours across 3 sessions, fully onboarded. They can all create the 1-to-1 scale. The fastest time we had for an onboarding was about 30 minutes. And that was an actual clay modeler. So he already works with 3D every single day. He's sculpting cars all day. And he literally picked up the tool and just started blasting away. Showed him the basic mechanics of it, pull the trigger, grab some things, and he just kind of pulled it all together. So, it's a big range. And one thing that we shouldn't forget is that we're moving through a 3D world every single day, right? So we inherently understand 3D far better than any 2D tool. And looking at something in 3D makes a lot more sense to us. So there is going to always be this dip in your productivity, but you're just looking at the possibility towards the end, and also just deem what is fully onboarding for you. I think that's really important, because if you look at onboarding to be like at Brett's level, you're going to be chasing him. You're going to be 10 years behind him every single time, right? But if you're looking onboarding to say, okay, I just want to move from this 2D sketch to a rough wire frame, and then I want to move from this rough wire frame to maybe a simple mesh model, and then I want to move from here to like maybe more serious stitch lines and so forth, and just treat that as a journey and implement that along projects as you go, as opposed to saying, all right, I'm gonna knuckle down for a month, 2 months, and I got to learn this package, and now I'm going to be married to this package the rest of my career. I think that's a very poor way of approaching it. So define onboarding for yourself is one of my suggestions in that.
That's like beautifully said. I think, we get this question all the time, like, okay, how long does it take to onboard my team, or how long is it going to take to become proficient in the software? And, we all say, well, look at people who use Photoshop. What percent of Photoshop's features do you use on a day-to-day? 10%, 15%? And if you master that, are you now proficient in the software? But if you go to another company that uses it differently for a different process, you're totally, non-proficient. And I think, like Shay said, you have to define what you're trying to solve and what you want to put as your level of proficiency. And so for us, I think, even how we train people in the software for enterprise, because we only offer training specifically for enterprise clients, we train them in the software differently based on what their pipeline is. If we're training a design team, we train them a specific way. If we're training tech designers, we train them a certain way, pattern makers separately. Even now we're training merchandisers, we're training e-commerce marketing people to use the render engine in our software. And they don't need to learn pattern editing. And I think that's where this discrepancy is that from the individual user's point of view, they see this whole pipeline of companies using it from end to end, and they expect themselves to take on all of that. And no company has ever done that. So why, as an individual, should you? So while, yes, we have an entire YouTube series that we very luckily set an arbitrary date a year ago of March 1st to release, and somehow this worked out very perfectly during this time. But we have a whole YouTube series that is basically our basic training that we democratized and we offered for free on our on YouTube. And I think people are using that and becoming quite good in the software as a starting point, and then realizing that that's enough to get them using for the daily use. But if they want to learn more about rendering, they can ask people, they can join forums, they can talk to different people about what they're doing in their pipelines. And I think if you try to do everything at one time for something where we believe as a software is limitless, it's impossible to ever catch up. And instead, if you try to figure out what am I trying to solve as your basis point of how you want to become good in a software, that's much more important. And then to use extracurricular time to focus on other things. But I've seen companies who have, done the YouTube tutorials, had, our enterprise training for 5 half days during a week. And the next week they were communicating in 3D with their vendor. And those things are just, beautiful testaments to people's excitement to want to learn. And I don't think you can ever say that everyone will have a flat day of like, oh, it will always take you this long to learn a software, because we are all sums of our experiences. We all have technical experience in different things. Some are pattern makers who understand patterns. Some have 3D experience, understand that. But we cannot ever have a flat line of everyone having the same knowledge or passion to do something. So it's a tough question to answer, but sometimes we say a month, 3 months.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think to your point too of like, and it's a bit overwhelming sometimes as a beginner with watching videos of creatives and artists and designers make things online. You see their end to end and you're like, I have to now do all of those things. And it's like, just focus on a specific goal. Are you trying to like master the texture? Are you trying to master like a digital version of this really textured pattern? Whatever it is, this fabric, this material, these colors, like focus, and you'll build those skills. They become cumulative. They grow on top of each other. So there's one question that I have that I'm going to circle back to, but we are getting a lot of questions about learning and access to learning. A lot of people in San Diego, technical designers, wondering where they can go to learn. And I wanted to touch on this a little closer to the end, but I'm getting a lot of questions. So I feel like we should maybe talk about this. Ryan, you spoke about your guys' YouTube series of tutorial videos. Where, for Substance and Gravity Sketch, where would you direct people? Where would you direct these designers to go and learn more about your programs?
So on our end, the good news is that we have a dedicated website called Substance Academy. So the videos are stored on YouTube, but we also add assets so that you are able to follow the tutorials together with the 3D files or the materials, etc., so that it's easier to pick up. And something I really would like to also mention is that we have our own tutorials, but also we have a community of users, Substance users that are mostly coming from game, but more and more VFX design and architecture that is growing very fast. And sometimes we see some tutorials that are even better than ours, done by our users. So you should find some cool stuff on YouTube and on Substance Academy.
Super. I did just drop the link to Substance Academy in the chat for the Zoom followers.
Yeah, we try to cover as many bases as possible. So similar to Pierre, we have videos inside of the application. So in Gravity Sketch, there's like a little graduation cap that you click on, and you can open up videos and just keep them pinned in your 3D world with you. You can watch, start, pause, stop as you go. But YouTube and Instagram, the community that we've built, there's roughly like 50,000 strong or so. And some stuff that people are doing is far better than what we can do in terms of explaining how to use the tool, or even like tips and tricks and shortcuts that we just built into the tool that we had no clue. So whenever you make a tool, the user actually tries their best to break the tool, and through doing so, they define a really interesting workflow, which is unique, and we may want to design on top of that. So I would definitely say YouTube, the Instagram community, also Twitter community. There's a lot of people on Twitter as well. We have a Discord channel where people are just self-diagnosing things. So jump on Discord, and all of this can be reached on our Learn page on gravitysketch.com. We also have a knowledge base. So you can just click through or type in a question, things pop up. And then when you're in the app, if you get the app, you're going to get videos on hand. And with our enterprise customers, they can actually tailor their own onboarding series, which we put in the application for them. So if it could be very industry specific or very much specific to the workflow that they're trying to incorporate into their company with Gravity Sketch.
Super cool. I just dropped that Gravity Sketch Learn link also in the chat. And then Ryan, is YouTube predominant? Sorry, Brett, I did not mean to cut you off. Is YouTube predominantly where to go for Clo?
We have an entire manual on our website as well. We also have a learn thing. We have forums. We have a section of our website called Clo Lab, which is power users around the world who are showcasing their portfolios. There are multiple Facebook groups out there that we didn't create that have been really exciting. I think the Fabricant created one that I'm in, and I kind of just see what people are creating, kind of a fly on the wall. And sometimes I recommend some computers to buy. But I think that's kind of the beautiful thing that all three of us agree on, that like we are nothing without the users. You know, we are nothing without the ability to see what people are creating out there, and even the tutorials they're making. And, you know, you'll learn a lot of stuff about your software very quickly by these people who want to purposely break it. And those are actually the people who are changing this industry. But yeah, there's tons of content out there, I think, for all three of us at this point. And, you know, us with our 30-day free trial with no credit card, like when someone says like, how do I get started? And I'm like, everything's there. Like, it's up to you at this point. And we're happy to help, but you definitely have a trampoline to get started.
And also ask people, like, the amount of conversations that are happening on Discord and Instagram, it's like, honestly, I don't even think we have to produce any more material, because people are like, they're so helpful. This community of people that have moved, like the early adopters to 3D, they're just like self-diagnosing and, oh, let me just make a quick video and I'll send it over to you. And I'm sure, Brett, I'm sure you have a lot to say on this, but I imagine if someone was to send you a message and say, hey, how did you do that thing in ZBrush or something like this, you definitely respond to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think that's like the good thing about 3D that I've seen, even from when I first learned 3D, even to now, is that there is, and it's not like a unionized community, but there is a huge 3D community with a bunch of incredibly selfless and people who spend hours and hours and hours like looking up problems, posting YouTube videos, you know, like almost everything that, you know, well, not everything, but a lot of things that you would want to know about a particular program. Like I could almost guarantee you somebody has wanted to know the same thing, and that person has spent time writing a blog or recording a video talking about this specific thing. So like YouTube University, even though it's not a real thing, but like legit, YouTube has so much knowledge, so much out there. It really, I think a lot of when it comes down to learning is that it comes down to you, the user. Like, how much do you want to learn? How motivated are you? How much time are you willing to invest in it? Because the knowledge is there. But there'll never be like a perfect manual to, hey, I want to create this thing. Tell me exactly how to do this thing. And then I think once people realize that that's kind of not what 3D is, I think people get frustrated, because it is a process and programs can be very deep. And even though, like, I'm just going to use Maya, for example, which is a 3D modeling program. I think Ryan mentioned something about this earlier. Like, I've been using certain programs for years, and I may use 30% of what that program is actually capable of. But that's fine, because if I need to learn something else, then I just kind of gradually increase my knowledge. So you don't think of it as like having to learn the whole thing. Like, just pick your end goal. Like, hey, I want to learn this program because I want to do X, Y, and Z. And then seek out the knowledge to hit those goals. And as long as you kind of keep it in that, your mind in that headspace, you'll be on the right track.
That's awesome. These are great. Yeah, YouTube University, official learning platform for everyone around the world. I think everyone at any given time, you're like, hold on, there's a YouTube tutorial. I do it. I'm trying to figure out the ins and outs of OBS and other random broadcasting software. If it wasn't there, I don't know, we probably wouldn't be live right now. There is a question. It's a kind of a technical question. So I'm going to read this verbatim to you guys, and I feel like it'll make way more sense to all of you than it maybe does to me, but that is quite all right. So on the subject of going from 2D to 3D, but then from static 3D to 3D simulation, there is a wide gap, or there's a wide tech and complexity gap between hard surface objects like footwear and cloth, the second involving complex simulation to better represent materiality of soft shapes. Do you see that gap closing soon?
Is this in relation to like soft body deformation? Is that what the soft shapes mean? I mean, I don't know how you guys interpreted that. I mean, that is the one thing that is in the way technically of 3D being used completely 100% accurately for fit, because we haven't solved soft body deformation as an entire industry. And there are companies who are working on this. There's a lot of incubators out there who are studying this technology. There's, this company that we talked to that basically creates the animation of soft body deformation and has used that to interact with our fabric simulation engine. So there's a lot of stuff being researched on, but in terms of a timeline, I have no idea. Yeah. It's a lot of different physics engines running at the same time. And if you imagine how the software itself, 3D software in general, you have to have a really good computer to run that. Imagine not just running one physics engine, but like multiple at the same time. So maybe game engine technology will help solve that as well, I think.
Yeah, for us, it's probably going to be quite a long time before we can include that type of thing in our software, because the second we start to bring in fabrics and physics, we could do it a lot on the game engine side of things, right? But that's not really what customers are going to want, their end goal, right? They maybe want the weight of the certain fabric, or how is a woven fabric going to react compared to a knitted fabric, and maybe there's knitted wool versus knitted cotton, and leather behaves completely different, and there's a lot of information to pack in there. But as technology improves, like things like 5G, we can essentially shove off all of that computation onto a cloud server somewhere, and maybe run that stuff in real time and start harnessing libraries of information out there. And once we hit to that point, I believe we can start aggregating all the information from all these softwares and all the companies out there. Adidas has, and Nike has, and Under Armour has, around how material flexes, stretches, and the types of fabrics and materials they're creating, or their suppliers are creating actually as well. So it's probably like going to be a whole industry thing to help push that stuff forward, both on the technology side, on the user level, the company like software side like us, and then also the big OEMs to kind of chip in. And if we aggregate it together, we can definitely create a pretty powerful database that everyone can tap into and start bringing these types of features and tools to all the softwares out there.
Super. All right. I didn't know, Pierre, anything?
Simulation is definitely something that is big. And it's, again, a matter of where you stop, like how much realistic you want it to happen, how much you want to combine different physics to happen. But if we talk about the discussion we had before, like doing a drapé of a cloth in cloth today is something that is not rocket science anymore, while it was 5 or 10 years ago. So I'm really confident that we will do better and already today and in few years. But indeed, simulation is key. The thing I just want to make clear also is that sometimes big companies or even users are afraid to go to this or that tech because it might not do the whole simulation they would like to do. And I feel like it's not the best behavior. Like that, you can already get a lot of things out of things that does exist today, and then you will ask, and you will and things will come up depending on your request. Especially if your community is as vivid as ours, like we are fixing things that they are bringing to ourselves on a regular basis. So yeah, just start to play around, and as soon as you find some limits you would like to do, just share with some of the development team, and then we make things happen.
All right, we're going to shift gears a little and go back to kind of a pipeline question. How long does it take for a design brief to be developed, tested, produced, and reach the user? And I believe it has, but and how has technology impacted this time?
I guess I can tackle this one first. Good question. Well, I'd say like typically, like if we're talking about like footwear, typically the process from like brief to like store shelf, it's like a minimum of like 18 months, at a minimum. And then that number can multiply depending on if it's a new technology or whatever. But typically it's kind of a 2-year process, but the actual like design and development part of it, I'd say kind of from brief to like tech handoff to factory could be like a couple of months. And during those months is where you're kind of really in 3D sketching, printing, rendering, etc. And then once you go from that into like the manufacturing side of it, that's when you start to deal with more like technical and cost limitations, not so related so much to like the technology. It's more like, okay, cool. We have this beautiful render, this pretty concept. Now, how do we actually make it? And that's a whole nother world that I'm not an expert on. But typically from brief to kind of tech handoff is a couple of months. I can't say that I've seen like that time like purposely get shrunk because of 3D, because I think that a lot of times we still want to use as much design time as possible to iterate. So even if we could settle on something sooner, it might be better to still like use that time and just to kind of really nail it down so that when you do send it off, you're not really kind of spinning again, unless there's like a manufacturing need to change something. So I hope that answers the question. So.
Yeah, with some of our customers, they have different objectives, and one objective may be reducing the time to kind of design lockdown, and others may just be around creative expression. But one thing's for certain is that every designer, at least on the footwear or the industrial design and automotive side of things, it seems that every designer and studio we work with, they're trying to break the brief, or like they're trying to challenge the brief in such a unique way so that they can actually, stand out amongst their peers and push their designs forward. So as Brett was mentioning, maybe it's about pushing it to have like much more creative ideas and concepts in that same time period. Or in another way, it could be around kind of a measurable change. But I can only speak really for the automotive because we've been working so closely with them. But that has a tack-on effect, right? So the rest of the organization needs to be prepared to work at the speed of design if design is now delivering things in half the time or a third of the time. And that ultimately, that's what they want, right? I mean, ultimately getting a product to market could save your organization a lot of money and also give you the competitive edge. So I don't know in the footwear industry, apparel industry, how briefs are treated and how they're challenged and broken. But I think design in general, it's always about challenging that brief and seeing what the brief, what's not in the brief that needs to be in the brief. And I think that's kind of the designer's job. And if tools like working in 3D immediately can get you to that point where you're asking and answering some of those questions, then that can definitely be a huge step up for you amongst your peers.
I think in regards to the apparel industry, from what I've seen, I think as designers you're constantly just trying to chase things that you have deadlines of, and you never actually have time to have fun and be creating for the pure joy of just like thinking of new concepts. You're constantly just trying to get stuff out because you're trying to catch these vendor deadlines. And so a lot of times what we've shown is that because Cloak does cut, a lot of that sample time and miscommunication out of the way, let's say, a whole month can get whittled down to 1 week. companies are now able to rely on designers to have better designs, to have more samples actually, because you can have unlimited virtual colorways of what you want to do. And I think that probably speaks to Gravity Sketch as well. Like there's so many limitless possibilities now of time and concepts if you stay with the same calendar. But instead, if you're trying to solve things where you shorten your calendar and you have faster deliveries, and you can do that as well. But it all goes back to like, there's so many different ways to do it. There's so many different things that it can solve, but every company is unique of what they're trying to fix in their pipeline. So regardless, like I just think, 3D in general is a no-brainer in terms of it'll solve something that you're doing. And then in turn, you'll find out new things that it happens to solve on the way.
All right. I have another question. We've talked a lot about the fun part, the enjoyment of designing. Being in these programs needs to be fun, enjoyable. I actually like that, Shay. It needs to be enjoyable. As a designer, you don't want to sit, especially if you're in 3D, if you have a headset on, if you're at a computer with all of these monitors, right? It needs to be, this process needs to be enjoyable. So what are, I don't want to say like your not top features because it's going to be different for every designer. But I want to talk a little bit about in each of your programs, the ease of creating physically based material like brush systems, digitizing fabrics, displacement paintings. What are some of those features that you guys are maybe have recently incorporated, or I don't know if we can talk about anything that's coming up soon, but what are some of those like features that are included in your programs that you think help really make it enjoyable and make that like just ease of creating easy?
So maybe I can mention something that was part of the very beginning of Substance Painter. Is what we call the painting with particles. So we were talking about physics and simulation, and here we can randomize an effect and apply graphic design or dust or mud or stuff like that directly onto your model. And I don't know how to say that, but even though you are not using it every day, each time you're using it, people are smiling. Like it's just a real delight. And something that might be a little bit more down to earth, but you were mentioning about displacement, and we allowed on Substance Painter to paint the displacement, but back in the day, you couldn't export the model that you have created. And we recently unleashed this boundary for the users who start to 3D print their object. And as soon as you do that, then you can do like crazy soil design and just push a button and print it. And it's been super exciting to see those kind of things, because with Instagram, LinkedIn, etc., you can also directly see users starting to use what you just did and start to share the results. So yeah, it's that the two I would pick.
Yeah, for us, the stroke or the ink tool has just been the winner every single time. So being able to just pull the trigger of your controller and wave it in midair, and it looks like I guess maybe like you're squeezing paint out of a tube. That's the only thing I could think of like it being akin to. And that experience is it's like the most memorable experience for most of our users. Now that like our users are acclimated to it, one question that we always get is, okay, I want this to feel like my pencil stroke. And we're working on a tool now, or a feature now, where we can apply a texture, like a gradient texture. And so depending on how hard you depress the trigger or how fast you move, we could change like the dithering, so it kind of feels like you have this pencil in space. I think it's a bit of a nostalgia because people want to kind of hang on to this pen and paper feel, but it's been such a part of design and creativity for so long that we definitely don't want to get rid of it. We want to kind of bring this kind of digital craft feel to the software. And then in terms of the stuff that we're working on, that, yeah, it's like the biggest challenges for us, but also we're trying to inject this enjoyable aspect to it, are things like constrained movements, or things that you would like hold a shift key down for on a keyboard and mouse. And because we're dealing with like the complete 3D digital space, like even gestural, you have like these two controllers, which are essentially like an Xbox controller split into two. And so we're very limited. We don't have the full keyboard and a mouse with double click and scroll wheel and all this stuff. So things like history, we put on the joystick. So you just roll the joystick back in time and you go, that's Control Z essentially, and you roll it forward, and that's Control Y. And things like constrained movements. So you actually just put your hands together, you grab an object and you slide it like this. So things like maybe you would learn in woodshop when you were in high school. We try to bring that type of familiar gestural stuff to the software. So scaling is just moving your hands apart and moving your hands together. Most virtual reality applications do that. So it's been really exciting for our UX team because they're just consistently looking at like, okay, how does someone lay out their kitchen? Or how is someone cutting potatoes? And trying to figure out a way to make that gesture part of the tool so that it just becomes second nature and almost like, oh, okay, this is so familiar to me. I don't know why it is, but this is like how we rotate things. You grab it and you crank it, and that's how you rotate. And it's a very familiar action, right? It's a very familiar action. Like if you're doing your umbrella or your sunscreen for your porch or something like that, it's the same apparatus. So those type of things are what we're actively trying to do every single day.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. I really want to try Gravity Sketch now. In terms of things that we had in the software, I think when we first started as a company, we kind of shadowed pattern makers and looked at how they did draping on mannequins using pins. And so that stuff exists in the software. And I think a lot of people don't know that. Like you can add pins, you can, basically pin pattern pieces in air or to the mannequin. And if you don't pin it, it'll fall to the ground just like it would in real life. And over time, obviously, we realized that not everyone remembers how to drape from college, and we went into all these other things. But one of the most interesting things we added to the software was this feature called flattening, which basically is drawing directly on a 3D avatar, and whether it's creating patterns or whatever it is, and then clicking some buttons and it flattens that pattern and sews it all together. For designers who are trying to sketch but don't really understand 3D space anymore because they've been 2D sketching for a long time, and it automatically creates a pattern for you. And I think when it first came out, pattern makers are like, no, this is bad. Like designers shouldn't be making patterns, and these patterns won't be accurate because they don't know how to make patterns. But I always tell the pattern maker, what's your current situation? You're receiving a sketch that you have to pull out of thin air to create a pattern and hope that when you sew that pattern together, it looks similar as a sample to that sketch. Whereas now a designer is like, here's my 3D, render of what I'm trying to accomplish. Here's a version of a pattern. How much of your job is now done as a pattern maker? And that shift in mindset was really important, I think, for people to understand, because it's better than what was before, but they were so used to how things were being done. And I think that was a huge message that we were sending versus just it being a feature. It had a lot more to do with thinking outside the box and trying to figure out ways to make people concept earlier and enjoy 3D earlier. And then in terms of stuff that's coming, there's stuff coming with Wacom. There's stuff coming with Substance. So we have a lot of things where we're learning from our mutual clients, like, oh, there is a need for this. And yes, it works already, but how do we make it better? And that's always been our goal, is to figure out from our mutual clients, what do you want this integration to do? And then going over beyond that. And I know we've had tons of discussions with Wacom about, yes, this works and the pen tool works great, but we wish it did this. And it just took a couple kinks on our side and some UX development, and now it's coming out in the next release. So I'm very excited to have a lot of cool stuff coming in the pipeline.
Yeah. Brett, at your experience with yourself and your team, what are some of those moments? And again, I might go back to when you have a new designer and you're introducing a program to a new designer. What are those things, those moments, maybe it's a specific tool that you've experienced that new designers are like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. I feel like we hear that. Again, at Wacom, we partner with so many amazing companies that, we have Gravity Sketch downstairs in the Experience Center whenever it's open again and we're safe to share devices. It's really great putting someone in a headset and giving them these tools, and now they have this line. I mean, even just something as simple as a line that is surrounding them, because I think oftentimes people do this and now you're in it. It's such a cool experience. With your team, Brett, have you, like, what are those things that you've seen people just be like, yeah, this is what I'm here for?
Let me think.
Tough questions.
I'd actually say, so I spent like many years in the video games industry, and one of the programs that we really use a lot in the asset creation process is called Zbrush, which is very much like sculptural 3D. Like the goal of the software isn't like precision and like measurements. It's purely like, hey, like start with a sphere in 3D, you push and pull it, and you can draw on it with the Wacom to sculpt it to whatever you want. So, and there are also like some really cool features within it because it can handle really like high resolution detail a lot better than a lot of, I guess, more traditional 3D applications can. So I think for me, like coming into footwear, for example, I didn't work with a lot of people who really knew a lot about that program, because again, footwear is a very different industry. A lot of the 3D was kind of, as you said earlier, not so fun, more technical. But when I've shown people, or people have kind of gotten exposure to something like ZBrush and kind of seen what it can do, and like how you can just like kind of sculpt, and Gravity Sketch obviously is basically kind of in that same ballpark, but a very different experience in using it. But I'd say ZBrush specifically, just like as a program, if you're not familiar with it, I recommend looking it up. It's fun, is how I put it.
It is. It's a fun one. ZBrush is one of those programs that I'm really good at making horns on everything. That's about as far as my expertise. So I'm like, this is a beautiful ball of clay with very symmetrical horns now. It's someone out there really appreciates it. There's a space for it. So we're at 9:30. We've got 15 minutes left. I know we had a lot of questions around education, where to go, where to learn these, learn and find out more information. Again, I think Discord for so many industries is a huge place. You have this just built-in community of people that you can ask questions to. There's so many amazing people out there. But one thing I wanted to touch on, and we sort of spoke about this earlier in our previous discussions, as you guys all work with different brands, different companies, Brett, maybe you've experienced this yourself. So there's a lot of opportunities for self-taught designers, independent learning. Have you guys seen a shift or more open acceptance within brands and within these companies, and maybe even big name designers that you work with? Have you seen that shift, or again, more of an opening door to designers that have learned independently that maybe don't have that formal higher education? Are you seeing those people, those individuals get into kind of hire these sought after like professionals, or is it still a requirement to have that like formal education? Ooh. I realize that was worded awkwardly. Sorry.
Yeah, this good question. I'll just talk about myself, for example. Mm-hmm. Like I after high school, I went to college for a couple of years in more of a trade school, but I don't have a formal education. I don't have an undergrad degree. I'm largely self-taught. Mm-hmm. And I've been fortunate enough to be successful in my career, work at some big video game companies, and even, now I currently work at Nike. But I think that definitely when it comes to, obviously this varies company by company, but if you put in the time and your portfolio like reflects your skill, like that alone, I think will, that will do a lot for you. Like the work has to be good, period. Like if you have a degree from a prestigious university and your work is crap, it doesn't really do a whole lot for you. But I definitely think that, and I can say, again, using myself as an example, is you definitely can have that career or kind of get into these types of jobs without a formal education. But your work just has to be good. And that really comes down to how much time you're willing to put into honing your craft.
Yeah, before starting Gravity Sketch, I was an industrial designer, and I primarily focused on. I started I started in furniture design, and then did like kind of objects and things like this that would go in like the home, and moved into consumer electronics, and then took a massive jump into car interiors, automotive interiors. And one thing I'll say is that I don't think I was ever an expert in any of those things, just because I didn't have the breadth of experience, especially in automotive interiors. There's so many things that you learn just by being on the job, and like seeing a car go straight through to fruition. And for that, it's like 6 years, right? You got to wait 6 years from the design to the actual thing hitting the streets. And so there's definitely about just doing really, really great work, but then also trying to gather as much like real experience, and not just experience of being in a design team that are maybe making shoes, but actually be on the factory floor and see what's coming out of the mold. Like see how your design is actually finally translating to the pattern cutter, and then finally to being worn by a user. And that actually informs your design practice much better. And so as a result, your design process shortens, or your design process becomes more nuanced, or it becomes more impactful. And so, yeah, at one point, I do hope to return to becoming a designer for either myself or for some company out there. But the first place I'll go is obviously to my peer designers and learn from them, but then straight to the factory floor, or straight to where the materials are actually being transformed into the physical goods. Because that, like, 3D is great. You can incept these amazing ideas, but if they can't be manufactured, or if you can't work with the manufacturer to unpack how that can actually come to fruition, then you're just making really pretty things that exist in the digital space. I think the end goal, at least for our audience here, is to bring something to materiality, right? To bring something to the shelves, to bring something to the racks. And the best way to do that is by working in collaboration with the people that actually have to physically make it. So yeah, there's the hard work, and then there's really just get that experience, get in there. And honestly, like go and get a shirt made. There's like these tailors in London all over the place. I'm in London, so go and just get a shirt made and see how they cut up your shirt. See what measurements they take. Like understand that stuff intrinsically, and let that inform how you design and how you work.
Yeah, I would really say the same thing. Like something that Brett mentioned also is that I see more and more the different worlds mixing together. Like people coming from the video games to go to industrial design, people coming from VFX and animation, so movies, going to automotive industry, people coming from architecture, going to level design. Like it's the way that people are influencing each other and opening the barrier about like you are architects, you have to do architecture your whole life is a great thing. And more generally speaking, like if there is two things to learn out of school is learn to learn. And afterwards you have YouTube, you have all that and people and next to you, and exactly what Seyi was saying, like just the curiosity to go to a workshop, go to a clay model shop. I mean, the main thing I learned out of my transportation design was in the clay shop. I mean, and not any like amphitheater, like big course and theories and things like that. So yeah, just craftsmanship and curiosity is definitely something to build.
Yeah, and speaking from personal experience, like I went to college and I didn't study 3D. I didn't go to fashion school. I'm somehow here on this panel, and it really has a lot more to do, like I mentioned before, the sum of your experiences. That's much more important. And even when I interview people for 3D designer roles at our company, I'm not really. Because I didn't go to fashion school, I'm kind of looking at your portfolio, but I think the software can be taught. I'm looking a lot at other things about. And it's come down to one simple word, and it's curiosity. And I think that sums up what all four of us are saying, is that if you have curiosity and you keep exploring and trying to feed that curiosity, that will speak volumes way more than a paper resume. And there are people who are learning the software on their own and who have transitioned, especially during this time, being furloughed or something else, and looking at new technology they always thought would be a hobby, but could now be a job, which becomes fun to them. And I'm seeing that a lot more. And even right now with, companies having to furlough employees just because, of financial decisions versus skill sets, being able to place those people at other companies is quite easy. There is a huge thirst from companies to have experienced people so they don't have to retrain them or to bring an expert in to then do internal trainings. And that's kind of where the industry is heading. It's realizing that you can't fully rely on a diploma because it doesn't tell you anything about that person. And I barely went to class, but you'll never know that because I have a diploma, that has a lot to do with just the way I think things have been taught over the years. But I think, trusting people more with their 3D knowledge and their output and their experience, and also being able to see their thirst for passion and curiosity. I think that's really what is driving the industry right now.
I love the word curiosity is great. And I think to add on to what all of you guys have said, is that you always keep learning. As professionals, we always have to keep learning. We have to adapt. We have to pick up new tools. Goodness knows tool sets change. I think within my team, we use a lot of Photoshop. It changes every year. You have to learn, you just have to always be learning. And I think the minute you stop being curious about learning more, being curious about trying to figure this out, I'm always trying to know at least some part of all of these different programs that we get to work with, things I get to work with down in the Experience Center, like having just I got to know something about it. And it's the minute I don't do that, I feel like you are stunted as a person. So yeah, curiosity is key. This is great. We are getting pretty close to time. I think we've got 5 minutes. I'm going to do my own Wacom plug here. There was one question about mobile workstation. Someone said, do we have any recommendations on a mobile workstation? And yes, I do. I, of course, would plug the Mobile Studio Pro. There's a million other workstations in the world. Maybe not a million, maybe 20 good ones. But the Mobile Studio Pro is really great. It is a really powerful machine. It gives you the same screen as a Cintiq, but it's just all in one. I know originally when Wacom launched the Mobile Studio Pro, we had intended on this being the Mobile Studio. We had intended on it being used within the 3D workspace. So the graphics card, processing speed, all of that stuff is really designed to hold all of these programs and to have them running simultaneously. I know one of the workflows that we had worked on was, Zbrush and Maya, which is often common kind of combo that you see. So that's a really great one. Outside of that, I'm an Intuos Pro user and I just carry that in my laptop around, but I'm also not designing anything in 3D. So I don't know if any of you guys have any suggestions for kind of hardware or computers or anything that you guys use that you think are really great. I know we have a lot of MSI laptops that we utilize at the Experience Center that are amazing. Again, that's more of kind of a gaming level laptop. Those are what we use to run Gravity Sketch.
On my end, I just would like to mention that the software, the three software we're doing, Substance Painter, Designer, and Alchemist, are working on Mac, PC, and Linux. Cool. So also, it's not a matter of operating system.
That's great. Yeah. That's another good one.
Yeah, well, most of the companies that we deal with in the footwear space are Mac-based primarily, and unfortunately, Mac doesn't support NVIDIA graphics cards, which are the graphics cards that push virtual reality. But there is a workaround. So most of the companies that we're working with are using the Oculus Quest, which is roughly $400. And we've created a cloud system so you can just drop your files to the cloud and drag them down to your desktop through the browser. And we'll also be releasing or re-releasing our iOS iPad version. So you'll be able to do pretty much everything on the iPad as well. It's the same file format. So you can just grab a file from your iPad app, throw it onto the cloud, bring it into VR once you have a VR headset, and you can start manipulating it in true 3D. So yeah, I think like for us, it's like about flexibility, because we really are doubling down on that front end of the design workflow. And if you're going to want to scale to more higher rendering and things like this, you probably want to go with one of those really robust graphics cards, maybe an MSI or Alienware or something like this.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we are creeping up on our last few minutes here. Thank you guys again, for waking up early, Pierre and Shay for staying up today. It's late, it's late afternoon over there. Thank you for everyone joining. Thank you, Oculus Quest. I wrote Oculus Rift, I've only had 2 cups of coffee today, guys. Thank you to everyone that has joined us on Twitch. Of course, everyone that is in the Zoom chat with us. Your guys' questions are amazing. Hopefully we got to everyone's questions. I know individually there was a question, of course, about internships. I would defer everyone to everyone's respective websites to look up different opportunities and things that are coming up. Make sure to follow everyone on social media. Actually, let's do a shout out. We have a minute. Shout out for all of your guys' Instagram social handles. It's Clo3D. I think I have that ingrained in my head now. Wacom, the Wacom Experience Center.
At Gravity Sketch, everything
Super.
is at Gravity.
Substance 3D, you will find us.
Okay.
Well, I'm not a company. I'm an individual, but I'm on Instagram at solid_lion.
Excellent. And again, Clo is at It's Clo3D. Thank you again, everyone, for tuning in today. A reminder of the